Dear friends, I want to share with you something very interesting and personal, which in a way started me on my journey of exploring reality. The year was 1969. I had just finished medical school and I was on a village posting in a small village at that time called Balabgarh outside of Delhi. It was supposed to be a rural rotation. And one day, the village elders brought a young man who was about 16 years old, I would say a teenage boy, who had just returned from Delhi. And they brought him to me because they said he had gone insane. So I asked them, why do you think he's insane? And they said he's just come back from Delhi and he's claiming that there are men on the moon. And, Neil Armstrong had stepped off the spaceship from planet Earth and said, whatever, one step for mankind. I remember the exact phrase, something like that, the first step for all mankind, something like that. Anyway, I told the villagers that he was actually quite correct. There were men on the moon. And the villagers were totally astonished when I said that. They said, then you must be insane as well. And so I asked them why, and they said, the moon is a goddess. How can men be walking on the moon? So we called a meeting of elders, and finally we agreed that there were many kinds of moon, and one of them was also a goddess, and then there was this moon that the astronauts had landed on. Much later, I read philosophy, science, etc., and I came across Einstein's statement that the moon would still be there if no one was looking at it. So I think most people think that the moon would still be there if no one was looking at it. So what's the answer? What we're touching upon right now is a philosophical debate between what is called scientific realism and the implications for our understanding of consciousness, and also its relationship to the physical world. So let's explore this a little bit in detail. Trying to improve the image here, but it's not happening, so never mind. You can ignore the blurriness and listen. So Einstein's statement that the moon would still be there if no one was looking at it is a reflection of scientific realism, which points that the physical world exists independent of our observations and perceptions. According to this view, the moon is a tangible celestial object that would continue to exist and follow the laws of physics even if there was no conscious observer to perceive it. Of course, the observation that Einstein is talking about is a human observation, right? And he's saying the moon would still exist and implying that the moon would still exist as it looks like to a human being when no one is looking at it. That goes beyond realism. It goes to what we might call naive realism. While the moon's physical existence may be independent of observers, as Einstein suggested, I'm going to argue with you that the experience and perception of the moon would be different for different species. I've argued this before as well. As different organisms have evolved with varying sensory capabilities and cognitive processes which shape their subjective experiences of the world. Just let's take a few examples. Horseshoe crabs. These ancient marine arthropods have compound eyes that are highly sensitive to ultraviolet light. Their perception of the moon would likely include a stronger ultraviolet component compared to human vision. Bats. Bats primarily rely on echolocation, using high-frequency sound to navigate and perceive their surroundings. While they may not have a visual experience of the moon, they potentially detect its presence through the reflection of their echolocation signals. Many bird species have tetrachromatic vision, meaning they can perceive ultraviolet in addition to the visible spectrum perceived by humans. Their experience of the moon's appearance would be influenced by this additional color channel. There are many other species that have varying sensitivities to light wavelengths, polarization, even non-visual senses that would contribute to their unique experiences of the moon. But let's go into what I think is really happening. And if you understand non-local awareness and superposition, then I would suggest that the different species-specific moons would disappear if there was no awareness. But awareness never disappears. But just let me for now say that the different species-specific moons would disappear as observers and observed experiences are entangled in non-local awareness. I'm drawing on the idea of quantum entanglement, where particles can exhibit correlations that defy classical notions of locality. In this context, the argument that I'm proposing suggests that the moon and observers exist in a state of superposition where they exist as possibilities until observed or measured. This interpretation aligns with the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which posits that the act of observation or measurement causes the collapse of the wave function and determines specific outcomes. I know this idea challenges our classical understanding of reality, but it is important to note that the application of quantum principles to macroscopic objects like the moon and conscious observers is at the moment an ongoing debate and exploration in the fields of quantum physics and philosophy of mind. But, fundamental reality is quantum mechanics. Everything else is a build-up on that. So everything else is a build-up on fundamental reality, which is best understood as quantum mechanics. And then quantum mechanics is also a modeling of qualia mechanics. Qualia means experiences, and experiences are different for different observers because we all use different instruments to experience perceptual reality. If you want to go further into this, then just think of how animals perceive the night sky. And they perceive it in unique ways. Birds, for example, like migration birds like indigo buntings, can learn the star patterns around the celestial pole to navigate during their long journeys. They don't rely on a single star like Polaris, but can identify the center of rotation in the night sky. This allows them to maintain their desired heading without needing an internal clock for sidereal time. How kind of bizarrely intelligent is that? Think of dung nocturnal dung beetles, similar to bees. Nocturnal dung beetles have superposition compound eyes that cannot resolve individual stars. Instead, they perceive smooth patches of light and dark across the sky. including the bright band of the Milky Way. They use the Milky Way as a visual reference to roll their dung balls in a straight line away from competitors. Bats, I mentioned bats earlier. While bats primarily rely on echolocation, some species, like the greater mouse-eared bat, can likely perceive moon and bright stars through their dim vision. Their perception of the night sky complements their echolocation abilities for navigation and foraging. I mentioned horseshoe crabs. These ancient marine arthropods have compound eyes, highly sensitive to ultraviolet light. Their perception of the night sky includes stronger ultraviolet component compared to human vision, allowing them to detect celestial objects differently. There are many nocturnal insects like moths who have superposition compound eyes optimized for low light conditions. They perceive the night sky as smooth patches of light and dark, similar to dung beetles, rather than resolving individual stars. So, to summarize everything I've said, animals' unique visual systems and sensory adaptations allow them to perceive and interpret the night sky and the moon in ways that suit their specific ecological needs, such as navigation, foraging, or predator avoidance. Now, how do we know this? We know this through what we call the scientific method. Does any other species have this scientific method? No. Does any other species have access to the system of thought called philosophy? No. Does any other species have access to mathematics? No. So all these systems of thought allow us to explore perceived and conceived reality. And all these systems of thought are basically the human mind, which is quite different from other minds. But what is the human mind? The human mind itself is a modification of consciousness knowing itself as sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. That consciousness is neither conceivable nor perceivable, but it manifests as this cosmic dream, which includes human beings and human minds. Montclair did a campaign on dreaming, and my participation was one sentence. We are all fictional characters in a collective dreamscape. We are all fictional characters in a collective dreamscape. And now maybe I have explained it, including the fact that Einstein's moon is just one of infinite moons. Let me know your thoughts.